we start the panel, let me just quickly pray for us. Our God and Father, we thank you again that we've all made it here and that we have some men that you've blessed with specific talents and abilities and knowledge that can convey that, can distill your word into ways that help us to walk it out. We pray that that would happen now, that you would help us with good questions and good answers and clarity, and that this would be ultimately building up not just of our strength and body as we battle the sun here, but also as we turn forth from this place and go back out into the world and make homes and dynasties and generations, all trusting in your promises, and pray that you give us the strength to do so. In Jesus' name, amen. All right, so panel rules. There are no rules. I'm going to ask some questions, even if they're directed to somebody specific. If you guys have a thought, feel free to chime in and riff, and wherever it goes, and we'll end it in about an hour or so. So we're going to start off with one that's directed just to Chase, and it's from Miguelo Fostero. It says, for Chase, why are you so much more likable in person than you are online?
I think that's one of my gifts. I think that's actually a blessing. Who was the person who asked the question?
He might be sitting right next to you.
No, I've received this mark, actually. It's been a critique of my my ministry.
No, you don't have to answer the
No, it's actually, this is a good question.
I've heard about this a little bit, so.
It's important.
Paul gets something similar.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it'd probably be good to leave these on all the time. But anyway, so when he actually had that. We see it in Scripture. People accused him of that.
Well, the most sinister people I've met are actually the guys that are nice to your face and then stab you in the back.
It actually is reversed. You're exactly right. I've known a lot of those people too, and they just seem like the most wonderful people in public. And you get them in private, and they just stab you in the back. It's all over the place.
I talked to my wife on the break. I'd like to clarify something, if I can.
Yeah.
How many of you are friends with me on Facebook? Okay, I just want to be very clear. All of you are my real friends. It's the rest of them I'm not friends with. So just word of clarification.
Okay. All right, let's do this here. Sorry, guys, I can barely see the screen because of the glare I'm trying to fix. All right, given the elephant in the room, so given the current events, assassinations and violence, what response should we have as Christians? Retaliation, at least in the same ways, seems to be a growing thought.
I think it was the dumbest thing that the left could possibly ever applaud. Right now across America, thousands of people are losing their jobs because they were foolish enough to celebrate his death on social media. They're actually running lists, and it's getting into the thousands. And we're cutting out.
That's because it's wireless, it's not the sound, guys.
So even here in Battleground, there's the prospect that at least one person in our local school district's about to lose a job.
Yeah, I think it comes down to, I've sensed the same thing, whoever asked the question, like a lot of people, not just on the Christian right, but the right, who are kind of like chomping at the bit for like action, because they want to do something. And I sympathize with that kind of like disposition, but we're people who don't think like leftists. We're not vigilantes, and we believe in God-ordained powers. And so the biggest thing right now is that Trump needs to act, and I think he is. I think there are things happening both culturally and socially, like CR pointed out, but there needs to be a total dismantling of leftist institutions. That's not going to come through kind of a grassroots thing. Now perhaps there may be someone on the right, like an Eric Prince, who could rise up and form something to defend Christians or defend Americans. But we just have a different. I've had this question asked to me a lot over the last few days, and I think there needs to be prudence and wisdom that's grounded in God's word and in our tradition, without demurring that basic instinct that says we should do something. Because the easy thing for stupid pastors is like, well, we don't do anything. We're not going to act. We're not going to. It's like, no, speak up. The chips are down. We see what it is. Let's call it out. So for pastors, to speak courageous, speak clearly. Like Foster's, I think you read Foster's statement earlier. Great statement. More of that. And then also, take into account who's not saying anything. And one thing I was thinking of this morning, these people that are complaining about this getting fired, it's not free speech, whatever. It's like, I remember 2020, I don't think any Christian thinks like it's good. They would have never said it's good that George Floyd died. Like nobody thought that. Like that's sad. That's really sad that man overdosed and that situation unfolded the way it did. It's really bad. But we've got people on the left that are actually celebrating. And like, if you're doing that, celebrating the assassination of an American, out of public life, goodbye. So
we, I think can speak, and I think that's what Chase is getting at. And I think wherever you find yourself, one of the differences between, say, a person who has agency in a community and somebody who doesn't is a person who has agency knows who to call. And when you make the call, someone picks up the phone and listens to you. When you don't have agency, you go into the streets and burn things. That's basically a kind of a way of saying I don't know anybody.
This one. Oh, maybe this one doesn't work either. My goodness. Yeah, along those lines, I agree. I think we have to stop being apathetic. People are already going back to normal since COVID. I think that was going to happen for sure. And that's because we crave stasis. We just need a new stasis. Like it has to, we have to actually not think this is going to go away without active action. And you really do have to, again, I'm just going to keep beating this drum. You got to become part of a community, part of a church, have kids, deep roots, get involved, get behind the right candidates, start businesses that have real influence, or if that's not your gift, join one that has real influence. If you don't know what to do, it's kind of showing like how far away we are from having the power we need, the influence we need to deal with stuff like this, So I just think the main thing is this is not the last time something like this is going to happen. This is like Chris, because he's old, says this is his third time around. I'm not as old, but this is already my second. 9/11 was kind of like that. And this stuff is going to keep happening, and we're not going to have a say if we don't get involved. And I don't know what you're doing right now to be involved, but that's go to your town council meetings, actually find out what all the different things on the ballot means, become friends with your school board. You're paying for them anyway. Your taxes are going there anyway. Why not run for school board? We had a bunch of homeschooling parents get on our school board. Why? Because it's ours. Like you took our money and we're gonna say, no, you can't bring that book in there. And they'll say, well, your kids don't go there. Well, I don't care. The kids that grow up to go transgender go there. So let's try our best to stop that. So just get involved wherever you can. I mean, it really is that simple and yet that hard, right? So.
There was actually a question about the school board and being involved in the case that you just mentioned where you're not sending your kids to public school. So maybe expand on that and us other kind of local public office, because it seems like we're predisposed to think we'll be involved in the things that were either directly affect us, but like you said, we're paying taxes, all these things. Government programs can be cut down, but stuff like the schools and stuff is going to take a while before that ever goes away, things like that, to where it's privatized if it ever is. So what's the argument for being involved in those areas, giving time to those areas that you're not necessarily directly swimming in those kind of pools locally?
Well, I think it's already been mentioned, public institutions are accountable to the public. That's full stop. It doesn't really matter where I send my kids to school if it's a public institution. So I actually calculated the other day, because I've owned real estate and commercial real estate. And by the way, it's your property taxes that go to fund the schools. And generally speaking, in most municipalities, 60 to 70% of the local budget is the school. So you're paying for it. I estimate I've paid $200,000 for public education over the course of my adult life. I think that gives me a right to say your curriculum's stupid. And I don't like the outcomes. And I don't like living in a community that is being influenced by this stuff. And that's all you need to know.
Is this on? There we are. I'm giving you a chance. Paul appealed to Caesar. Right, Paul appealed to Caesar. He had the right as a Roman citizen to make an appeal to Caesar. He didn't say, oh, that's not spiritual. That's political. Well, I guess I can't do that. I guess I just get killed by the Sadducees or Pharisees, right? It was a good run. He said, no, I appeal to Caesar. As a citizen, we have these rights. They've been given to us. Whatever God gives to us, he expects us to use for his glory and the good of our neighbor.
Now on that, here's my favorite part when it comes to that with Paul. Philippi, no, I'm not going quietly. They got to come here and apologize to my face. That's what he said.
Yeah. I mean, Paul would use whatever he has. He's like, I'm on a trial for the resurrection, purposely to divide the Sadducees and Pharisees. We should be really shrewd and really wise and get involved wherever we can and just be done with this caring about your community and get involved in politics or whatever is somehow not pious. That's just stupid, right? And when people say, what's your complicated argument for it? I don't have one. That's stupid, okay? Seriously, these long dialogues. I've been trying to finish a follow-up to It's Good to Be a Man because it would sell pretty well, I think. And I just have so many kids. But when I think about a book on marriage, I could almost get it down to 2 pages on the big things that matter in a marriage. It's that simple. A lot of this stuff is that simple. The quest to study more is the quest not to take action a lot of times. Right, man, if I have a better strategy. The way you figure this stuff out is getting involved. You have a mandate from Scripture to get involved, to be salt and light, to subdue and have dominion. You have examples in Paul, Daniel, Esther, whoever you want to be involved in the political process and to use the influence God's given you. That should be enough. Stop listening to those people. If they don't want to be your friends, you can unfriend them on Facebook first or keep them there. But just charge forward and get involved. It's that simple.
Yeah, and I would say for even local conservative politics, the GOP in Colorado is terrible. It's been terrible for a while. But if you're looking to make friends and build alliances and have influence, it's very easy to attend their meetings. Most of them are kind of very neocon-y already, very libertarian, especially in Colorado. But it's not going to change unless you get in there. And you're probably not going to start a new political party. I mean, Elon tried that, and I think it already failed. So if he can't do it, you're probably not going to do it. So just get involved in those conversations. At the very least, it's like Paul going to the God-fearers in the town and trying to evangelize them and share the gospel with them, invite them to church, be part of your community. But at best, you're going to begin to be able to give them a better vision than just kind of subservience and losing all the time and try to call them to something greater.
Yeah, and just a real quick local example that just happened, since some of you guys are obviously from Battleground, there was a teacher in the high school here that made mockery of the Kirk assassination, and that was made public on social media. It got blasted everywhere, and then a link to the email to the people that are in charge of school board and city council and other areas has got flooded with demands for fixing that, and she's been put on leave, and they're doing a full investigation. So even if you're not going to be seated in the chair at those meetings on the council, showing up and writing to them and flooding them so that they can't clean their inbox fast enough with these things, it really does move the needle in those areas as well. So even if you don't have time, you do have time to write an email or repost a tweet or share on Facebook, and that does do stuff. So we literally just saw it happen and really happy with the results there.
Yeah, I just have one more thing to add. How many folks here are victims of public education? Okay, so I am, and it was a miserable experience. And so the reason I didn't send my kids to public school was only in part because of concerns related to discipleship. The larger sort of concern for me was misery. So I hated the 8th grade so much I took it twice. I played so much hooky. And I think unless you were in a really nice sort of upscale community where you had excellent teachers because that's where they wanted to be because the pay was good, likely your experience in public education was at least a little bit like mine. And I think in the interest of loving our neighbors who maybe don't have the freedom to homeschool or to send their children to a classical Christian school, we should do the best we can to get involved in public education, not because we're endorsing it, but because we're trying to mitigate its negative effects.
Yeah, and for the younger generations, playing hooky is not showing up for school. So continue in that vein of local influence, and then think about guys like Tim Keller and their city ministry and third way type of stuff, and how does that kind of contrast with things that we've heard today, like family rootedness and setting up multiple, like generational life in local communities? How does it contrast with kind of his way of pushing things that has a huge influence in the Reformed world?
Yeah, I'll offer a kind of a contrary opinion. Maybe, I don't know if Foster will agree or not, so we're going to find out. Is that there's actually a case for Keller that is good, and that he had a model that lacked courage and lacked conviction and clarity, but he had instincts and kind of a sensibility where he could be effective. He was effective. Now, for good and for bad, like he was a coward in many ways. But I think his vision for, I think I make fun of it all the time, kind of the in the city for the city stuff, this kind of like, you can be in the city for the city, but not in the nation for the nation. Otherwise, you're a bad person, But I think there's actually some things that you can glean from that approach. Obviously, you could glean stuff from Wilson's approach as well and how they're trying to impact culture. But yeah, if you were to make kind of a very based conservative Tim Keller, I think that would be very effective in some places, like especially in more less demonic cities like that are not like New York, where they're about to elect this psychopath to governor. So I think there's some things we can learn that we can take and apply and produce some good fruit.
I'm always giving it a chance. Oh, no, still not there. How about now? There we go. When I just look at the mic, whoever's the sound guy, I'm giving you a chance. That's what's happened. I know how hard your life is. Sound guys get the wrath of pastors almost more than anybody. I always think there's kind of like early Rushdoony and late Rushdoony. Like early Rushdoony, I appreciate. Late Rushdoony, I can't stand. There's kind of early Keller and late Keller. I think Keller is a very gifted man who, like Icarus, flew too close to the sun. He probably would have been a fine enough pastor had he stayed a professor in a smaller New York town or Pennsylvania town. I forget where he was before him and Dick Kaufman went to New York. But no, I think his basic model, his early church planning manual I have from 2001 is still really good, and I enjoy it. The problem with Keller is that, to Chase's point, he was a coward ultimately, and he's got to be held accountable for that. I'm not so sure how good of a job I would have done in Manhattan when I had all that money and influence and power thrown at me. I don't know if I would have stood the temptation of all that. They always say if you wanted to have a sophisticated lay, go to Redeemer, right? They wouldn't preach against fornication. There's never sermons on abortion. In his study guide on Romans 1 that I bought in 2004, and he doesn't even talk about, he touches on homosexuality for sentences in something that's about 100 pages. the book of Romans. So he wouldn't actually do what he preached. That's the problem, right? I think a lot of his transformationism that is more or less right, and I agree with that. So I don't think there's that big, and I'm also, when I say localism, I don't mean agrarianism. Like, everyone seems to think when I'm talking about localism, that's what I mean. I don't. I hate farming. I don't like cows. I don't want to milk cow. You got to milk those things twice a day. Don't you want to have your kids in sports? Do you like to go on vacations? I do. I'm not going to do that. I don't think it's ideal. What's that? I don't want to be Wendell Berry. No, I don't. I've only read one of his articles. It was actually good. But he's Wendell Berry's like Dallas Willard. I don't like him just because of their followers. But I think we are just trying to escape. We're just trying to escape. That is the last 4 or 5 years are people trying to run from conflict, trying to run from responsibility, trying to get somewhere. I get going somewhere safe for your children. So I think if you're in the city, if you're in the suburbs, if wherever God's put you, you have a responsibility to do what you can where you're at. And if anyone's always preaching idealism to you, I'm not trying to fix the nation. Like, I'm trying to mow my lawn. I'm trying to tell my kids no. I'm trying to read the Bible with my wife. I'm trying to plant churches where I live or whatever. I don't know how to save the nation. I am a product of public school. And everyone likes to go to conferences to talk about a bunch of stuff they're not going to do and read a bunch of books that they're not going to obey. And so I think the need of the day is wherever God's put you, do what you can. Who knows what the Lord will add to it, right? I think I was just talking to someone about this before the session, going back to the Charlie Kirk, he's just one man. And now there's people over in Germany and people over in Korea chanting his name. He's just one man. If the Lord decides to set stones soaked on water on fire, they're going to burn, right? So it's like you be faithful where God's put you and stop trying to make design everything perfectly, so.
Just a thought on Tim Keller. So I'm curious. I attended Keller's church maybe 4 or 5 times. Anybody else ever go to Keller's church? Got 1, 2, okay. So we're talking about the Upper East Side. We're not talking about Harlem. We're talking about one of the most wealthy communities in the world. And he was not suffering for Jesus. I want you to know that. And he lived on Roosevelt Island, which is in the East River, which has got it's basically the East River is a moat. It's a very exclusive community. The rent's there like about $6,000 a month for like a 1-bedroom apartment. And the reason I know is I have a friend who lived in Roosevelt Island, and whenever I went to New York, that's where I stayed. And Keller was in the neighborhood. And it's like a small town right in Manhattan. It has a small town vibe, that kind of thing. So I was involved in urban ministry back before it was safe. The timing of Keller's ministry was really intriguing to me. The whole, broken windows policing program began right about the time he arrived. And so the city went from being a place that nobody wanted to be to the place that all the cool kids wanted to be right about that time. And anyway, the thing that I was always most kind of put out about had nothing to do with Keller. It was with the idolatry of Keller, the worshipfulness that your typical Midwestern, sort of wannabe pastor, wannabe, big name pastor had for the guy. He was like, oh, wow, look at that. All the powerful, wealthy people in Manhattan like him. I wish I could be like him. That's really the thing that made him tremendously influential. In terms of the church, I think he was a fine preacher. But the church was basically a youth group for people in their 30s and 40s. There were no children there. And it had a reputation in sort of the Christian community in New York City, and I know about that because I know other pastors in New York, and they would tell me about it. So I'm not going to talk about it because I can't, substantiate what I was told. But anyway, why was it that everybody was like trying to be Tim Keller? That's the thing that kind of annoyed me. I was fine with Tim Keller being Tim Keller. I just didn't like the guy in Tubunk, Iowa, whatever, trying to be Tim Keller. That bugged me.
And another thing to throw on there is when we're talking about Tim Keller and contrasting that with what we're espousing and hoping catches is children. Like he writes a book on marriage and doesn't mention children at all. So how do you live in light of a Keller-esque influenced world and be multi-generational and grow local communities? You have children and you're good fathers and mothers and you pour into raising them. And that's something that he and his ministry just wasn't very pastoral about. And even if he spoke on it at times, his community certainly didn't live it, and there weren't a lot of kids. And
Well, I can tell you why. When you have kids when you live in Manhattan, guess what happens? You leave. I experienced it. I had people who would come to my church in Manchester, Connecticut, which was an hour and a half away, who used to go to Redeemer. They would travel from Fairfield County all that way just to get, into a Reformed church that you could have kids in. Because, by the way, everybody in kind of the PCA in Fairfield County is a Keller disciple too. And so there's not very much encouragement for having families.
okay, pivoting a little bit. So what's happened recently with Charlie Kirk? You've seen things like Reformed X stop fighting over, infralapsarianism and all of these things, and all commenting and sounding like we're all on the same team in a lot of ways, at least more so. But what are the best ways for churches sympathetic to the vision that we're espousing of the world right in front of you and all the ways that we're kind of teasing that out in these talks? What are ways for local churches to associate across distances and theological distinctives towards building now that there's kind of a catalyst to do so?
I'll just speak from our experience, and this was before what happened this last week, was I just started reaching out and kind of sussing out other pastors and churches who were aligned, whether they were Baptist. We have Baptist, Lutheran, non-denom, Anglican, Presbyterian, both CREC and PCA. And we all have a common disgust of socialism and leftism, and it, regardless of our theological convictions and how that plays out. And so we work together in our state to go hold a couple of political rallies against a wicked House bill. And so that kind of stuff starts with forming relationships locally, and someone's got to start the conversation. We've tried with other pastors, but you have to have a filtering mechanism. Otherwise, those groups can kind of blow up. Like one of our groups almost fractured over like, should we have DeSantis or Trump? I was on Team Trump, and a lot of guys were on DeSantis. But we'd have masculine debates, and that would be fun. And then when Trump was the guy, we all rallied around Trump. And so there's got to be some cohesion and coordination locally with other churches across denominational lines. And I really don't think it's that. To me, it hasn't been that difficult. I mean, it's been difficult when there are churches out there that do not like what we're doing, that actually hate what we're doing and trying to influence Colorado. But yeah, you have to come up with 3 rules. So one rule was how bad is Russell Moore? And so it was assumed a yes, and you have to describe how bad. And another was when was the last time you were called a Christian nationalist? This kind of stuff to you have to test them a little bit. And that's how we formed kind of a local coordination effort when a bill finally popped up and we could fight it.
So you're in Boulder, which is sort of kind of left-leaning, right? So we're not talking about, a community that is kind of evenly split even. You're in a pretty kind of LGBTQ cheerleading kind of community, and you are standing out in good ways, but so identifying other churches that are like yours is probably not too difficult.
Well, it only has been difficult locally. We've yet to find a good evangelical church locally. They'll meet with us. We have a prayer meeting next week, I think, with local pastors. And I don't mean to speak ill of them, but they do not want to associate with us publicly, right? They do not. They'll pray with us, but they look at us like we're insane. And I'm fine with that. I'm okay kind of being that. But we formed it across kind of the Front Range and western slope of Colorado. So it's more statewide. I wish there was that kind of local I think they are aligned. And that's what frustrates me and why I keep going is I think these pastors believe what we believe, but they're afraid of the women in their church and they're afraid of the Democrats in their church who they've led on, like Tim Keller, and they don't even know who Tim Keller is. It's just in the water of evangelicalism, where we're not going to confront these blatant sins. And so it has been difficult locally. But yeah, we do stand out in that way. But it was never like, this is going to be a great marketing tactic. You know, we're gonna really get a lot of hate this way. It was just like, no, we need to be faithful where we're planted. But I would love more local support and fellowship from other churches.
So what I'd say, we've got pretty good relationships with local churches. Back home, we wanted to. I remember Driscoll used to always brag about planting a church in the most pagan city or something. You know, we like to win, so we picked a place that wasn't the most pagan, like Jesus. But we have good relationships with a lot of the local churches, and I've developed this just by taking their phone calls or giving them a call and going out and talking to them one-on-one. Our church was 1 week old, and I got accused of being an authoritarian cult leader. And I was like, man, I'm good, but not that good. I need more than a week. So I said, hey, man, I heard you're saying this. And he said, no, I wasn't. And then I got the screenshot. You're a liar. You did say this. We should get together. And he's like, okay. So we got together, and we talked, and we're able to work out our differences to some level. And then he had a church split. And I heard some of the people criticizing him, and I thought the criticisms were stupid. And I think he had, whatever problems he had, these weren't true. So I called him up and said, hey, I'm hearing all this stuff. How can I pray for you? Whatever. And so then prayed for him. We catch up by text every once in a while. I hate the Gospel Coalition. I've been kicked off the Gospel Coalition since I believe it's 2010 or something, where they blocked me for criticizing Tim Keller. He was rejecting hell at the time. So I've been a big critic. They finally blocked me on Facebook the other day, where I criticized their article on Charlie Kirk, which was just terrible. And that guy, he had liked it. And said, this was fantastic, and I just rip it on Facebook. And then he texted me later saying, I thought about what you said on that, and you're right, and this is horrible. And this guy loves Gospel Coalition. He loves it. And now he's pulling away. And a lot of times your influence is just building these relationships, leaning in for the long haul, actually caring about them. And folks are waking up, they're showing up. But I think we have someone that fled discipline. And I've had 2 different churches call me up and say, hey, I get this guy left your church, came to our church. I get the sense he didn't leave on good terms. Can you talk to me about it? And I was like, yeah, that is accurate. And we're building those sorts of relationships. And a lot of this comes from time. We give all senior pastors, I let come to any of our conferences free locally. And I give all their people 50% off just to encourage them, just to spend time locally. All those little things, you got to develop the relationships and all that. And then at some point, you kind of get to cash it in. And it's not that you're not building relationships just to cash it in someday, but you do get to eventually, And so I think those are little things like that go a long way. I'd start by just getting to know your local pastors and getting involved. Or I wouldn't start with organizing something until you've taken some initial steps to building relationships like that.
Yeah, great. Pivoting again to our younger audience, I've had multiple questions about, they're looking to get started in the work that we're talking about and, generational living, building local communities, but they're single and in their church context, in their local context, having a really hard time finding a spouse, especially in the Reform world where, you joked that a mega church is, 75 people. In those contexts, how would you encourage or instruct or give practical kind of walkings out of finding a spouse when that's kind of your situation?
So I commend one of my elders who created an organization to find a wife, and worked for him great. So it was a homeschool alumni association. Yeah, and cleverly he identified his wife like in the first few years, and it just disappeared after that for some reason. I think that you just need to get creative. I mean, if you just take a passive approach and you expect it just to kind of happen, you're not, I think, working in the way that you should. I think finding, your spouse should be something that you think about and get creative about in the same way that you would think about and get creative about starting a business, to kind of create a parallel. If you're thinking, okay, where are the kinds of, if you're a man, where are the women that are likely to be good spouse material for a man like me to be found? And then think about how to get into those kind of lanes, I guess you could say, to be able to identify, a woman who might be the right woman for you. And I think that when it comes to the ladies, it's a kind of reverse engineering. So I worked with my kids a lot on this subject. But this is something that fathers should be thinking about. Fathers, historically, around the world, took a leading role in helping their children form households. And this is something we need to recover. I think that this idea that you just kind of, kick them out of the house and hope for the best is not the way we should be thinking about these things. We ought to be talking to our kids a lot about stuff like this. And, in the case of my three kids, there's kind of a story to tell with each of them that's, distinct and kind of corresponds to their personality and opportunities. But I was always the guy that was bringing up the question or bringing up the subject with my kids. I didn't just wait for them to bring it up. In fact, they probably got tired of me bringing it up. I don't know. My son is here, my oldest son. He might have some thoughts on that. But I would bring it up generally when they couldn't get away. So like when I'm driving them home from something and they're sitting in the seat next to me, and I'd ask them questions about girls or boys or whatever, and about what they thought and those kinds of things. And then we'd explore the conversation. I did a lot of talking.
I don't know who's asking the question, but I can just speak from the experience we have in Boulder, because it is hard for like single Reformed dudes to find a wife in Boulder, Colorado. But we have success stories and non-success stories. The non-success stories are typically very similar. They're very like on the first date, they're trying to figure out the girl's eschatology, and they're like asking questions about the Talmud, like, what are your thoughts on the Talmud? And it's like, dude, like, quit being weird. And
I know those guys.
Yeah, and it's like, I understand, like, it's really unfortunate. I will say that, because when I got married 17 years ago today, before we got married, like, Kim and I didn't know anything about complementarian egalitarianism, and we didn't know what Reformed theology was. We were 19 when we got married, and we were just general evangelical, non-denominational group Southern Baptists. So you don't have to be so weird. What women are looking for, agency, men with a sense of purpose and conviction and clarity, and that aren't intimidated and just have a sense of like, I'm going to go do something. At that point when I proposed to my wife, it wasn't even like I didn't even have a job, and so like you're misreading.
Well, I know some fathers here would say, no way.
I know. And that's fine. But like, you get so hung up on the particularities as a young man, because it is scary out there. Okay. A lot of these women are closet leftists and feminists. So I totally get the instinct to be on the defensive and get clarity, but like, just be normal. Go find a normal Christian girl. I told some of my guys, like, go to the local mega church for a few Sundays. Like, you're a member of my church, go attend and meet a girl.
Plunder the Philistines.
Yeah, sure. And just don't be weird, and like, be like, yeah, this is where I go to church. It's great. You should come.
So reverse that, though, for the ladies that aren't going to be doing the pursuing. Like, what about them? What about the ones that were raised well? They're Reformed. They want to honor their fathers. They want to honor their tradition, and looking for guys within that world with agency and maybe some money and some things like that.
I've got a story I like to tell about my daughter. on this matter. So I think you need to put the girl in the place where the fishing is favorable. In other words, she's the fish. And so you want her to be in a place where you got the right guys fishing. So how do you find that place, and how do you put her there? So with my daughter, she's very bright. She scored, I've mentioned this before in certain circles, she scored in the top 1% in the SAT in both the math and the language. She could have gone anywhere to school, but she didn't want to go to school anywhere. She just wanted to get married. And I said, sweetie, the boys in Sunday school are just not going to cut it. You got to go to college. So this is where you're going to go. And she said, okay, Dad, what should I study? I said, physics. Because she was actually good at physics. And I said, and here's the reason. You'll be the only girl. You'll be surrounded by a lot of smart guys who are going to make a lot of money. And that's a pretty good idea. She didn't like my idea. She didn't always go along with everything I suggested. But anyway, she ended up marrying an historian. And he's a good guy. So he's the father of two of my grandchildren. And he's doing okay. He's doing okay. Gave me my first grandson, so he's doing great. Anyway, but I had to kind of talk her into that. And then when she was at school, she was at a good school, and she was at school, she didn't see things coming together along the lines that I had laid out for her. And she was afraid she was going to have to settle for being an academic, go on to get her PhD, and kind of live as a single woman. Well, I doubled down and started praying. I mean, literally, seriously, I prayed and fasted for that girl. And out of the blue, this guy comes along. And another part, there was another suitor that I didn't like, and I sent him packing. So, as your dad, when you do something like that, you're like, okay, well, the next one better be good, because I don't want to spend the rest of my life feeling like I was the guy that, kept her from getting married. But I did. I fasted and I prayed, and then when this relationship developed, the first thing she asked me is, Dad, were you praying for me? And I said, yes. I prayed for you every day. Every time your name came across my mind, I prayed for you and your future husband. So I took responsibility in these ways, and I think that fathers need to do that.
I'll take a shot at this for single men and single women, just for those who are trying to figure it out on their own. So this applies to both. You need to become the sort of person that people want to marry, right? Or should want to marry. So focus on getting your finances, vocation, your health, your commitment to your church, all that sort of stuff. There's plenty of areas to grow and really focus on getting that stuff in order. Then for guys, nothing drives women away like neediness and desperateness, right? Women don't like that because they really want to be able to lean on you and know that you're strong and you're there for them. It's probably one of the big reasons women tend to marry up in height, which goes across all cultures. Women don't like to marry short guys. You can get past that, guys, but as the kids say, you have to have a little extra riz. But you can get past that. You want to add something? You look like
well,
you do.
I just, where did the old-fashioned wisdom of playing hard to get go? This idea that if you're desperate and needy, people are going to actually think that's cool and compliment.
Oh, it drives chicks away. I could tell you how you single reform men do this. I've seen this. So I come from a world where we didn't text when we were dating, but texting is a big part of those relationships. And the guy's like, good morning. Like, you go on your first date, okay? And the next day, the guy, first thing in the morning, good morning. How you doing? Dude, you just saw her 12 hours ago, okay? First off. And she's like, oh, I'm fine. And then it's like this big block of text. Blah, 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 blah. Vomit all your emotions and feelings. And then the girl's like, well, thumbs up. Boop, boop. Thumbs up, might as well. That's not a good sign, okay? And then there's a few moments, like the bubble, blip, 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 right? That is sad, okay? It's sad. You should be so busy that you forget about her for a little bit, but if not, pretend, okay? So it signals that you don't have a lot going on, that they're gonna have to carry the weight. Right. So I kind of flip it right now a little bit, and maybe it's because of the fall of our society on sexuality. I think guys need to play a little harder to get. I'm a little more radical. I'm not a big fan of how courtship has taken shape. I think it's okay for traditional dating to, in a non-exclusive way and in a non-romantic, erotic way, to get to know multiple people at the same time that might be someone. It's just like getting to know them, right? This is at a very basic level. And I think that shows that guys have options. If a girl, if you're the guy that dates through, if you get broken up with by a girl, like 3 girls in the same church, you might be screwed. Girls don't want to get the trash, right? You might have to go plunder the Philistines. So if you guys can't handle this, I'm telling you, this is how it works. So anyway, the guys have to play a little more hard to get. Ladies, you need to know, first off, if you're tall, stop wearing heels. It's a bad idea. Because if you're like 5'10", 5'11", you've already shrunk this down. It's like 1% of the population is 6 foot, makes over $100K a year when it comes to guys in your age. Yeah, and blue eyes. But don't do that. But the other thing is, don't be desperate and needy either. But if you like him, bat your eyes a little bit, right? Laugh at his jokes. Like, let him know that you're interested, because he probably is faking it till is making it in a lot of ways. He needs some encouragement. And so that's some thoughts I have. Also in the early dating, I think, to Chase's point, a lot of reform guys don't understand that all those interview questions scare people. Like, again, it feels desperate. What do you believe about this? What do you believe about this? Are you terminally online? Yada, yada, yada. And the girl is like, she gets overwhelmed, she gets paralyzed and doesn't think. You have to show them that you're fun to be around, that you're excited about life, you're excited about things. Because really what a lot of women want is a man that they respect, that they can, hop on the back of the bike, ride the motorcycle and go along with. On the other side, to the women, some of you guys have ridiculous standards. You will be ugly. Give it time, right? You have ridiculous standards. It's crazy how you're limiting. The years go by so fast, and you'll either get round like a plum or you'll look like a grocery bag with sand in it, right? This is what age does to us. It's erosion, it's a reality. And you fall in love over time. That's why arranged marriages worked once upon a time, because the parents picked well for their kids and time together. So you need to have standards that are relative to his station in life, demonstrated potential. Well, I want a man like my dad. Your dad's 40. Your dad's 45. This kid's 22, right? Give the kid a break. Like, how is he doing? What's his trajectory? Marry him for demonstrated potential. Like, maybe he doesn't make a lot of money right now, but the guy is committed to his art or committed to his trade, and he's going to go somewhere because he's got that drive. Look for drive. Stay away from desperate men. Stay away from lazy men. And if you see a guy that's going out there and trying, bat your eyes. Let him know you like him. These are things that gets the early relationship. And then on both sides, they need to be introduced to your friend circle, in your church real soon, and to your parents real soon. One of the reasons I don't really like the courtship model that I get in trouble for criticizing, I just don't like how it intensifies things that you could actually be done with quicker. Where it's like, if a guy comes and says, hey, can I date Galilee? And I go, 1 second, Gal, have you heard of this guy? And she's like, I kind of know him. No, you may not date her. Or you may not court her. I'm not going to give you my fatherly authority and stamp this thing. I want to know that my daughter knows you and spent some time with you. And if she's real interested, then yeah, I'll sign off on it. But I think we have to create environments where people can get to know each other, and that you don't get locked into a relationship premature. And so those are some of the things you start doing that. Where can you meet women? They're half of the population. Right? They're half of the population. They're half of all people that's ever existed. And I don't know if you guys are looking around, but competition ain't strong, okay? And on both sides. So I think you have, dating apps and Instagram have really hurt women. and pornography and video games have really hurt men. And back off some of that for obvious reasons, like repent. But even the things that are morally acceptable, back away and start to understand what people really look like and how people really react. And I think if we do things like that, we can start to build an environment where people are getting married, they're actually happy together. There you go.
Yeah, great. And guys, go get rejected a couple times. It's good for you. Like, just do the thing.
They're the one that's losing, right?
I know.
They're the one that's losing. What are you worried about? You want to be married to a woman that doesn't like you?
Hey, I think you have a nice smile. Can I buy you a coffee? And then get a good hard no, I have a boyfriend, and it's really good for you. And then try again. And also, if you're, worried about, beauty before we become a grocery bag filled with sand, as Michael Foster
It's a good
put it,
picture, right?
go see our sponsors, Mount Athos Performance over in the corner, and Be Regenerated. Cameron over there will get you all set up and make sure that day's prolonged before it comes. Anyway, we're going to wrap it up here because I think your sauna exposure has exceeded the medical required limit. Let's do maybe one or two more. But if you're in a blue state and you're trying to build community, what's kind of your decision-making matrix of whether you stay or go, or whether you dig in and try and build something? In places like Moscow, it's one way, even though it is in a university town, which is very liberal. But for the guys in blue states, we're in a blue state. When do you stay and fight, and when do you get out of there?
I might have a different metric. I mean, a lot of people have asked me that with this stuff going on in Colorado. I'm like, to me, they're not going to ever back down. Even when I have friends in Texas and Oklahoma that are experiencing the same hostility, even there, Tennessee, wherever it is, like this stuff isn't it's going to travel with you, especially if you're outspoken. They're going to find you. And sometimes they're even more rabid in red states, the blue hairs are. And so they'll come find you. And for me, it's like I have the structures in place to make a life here, and I like the beauty of Colorado. I believe that God has wonderful plans for the state. It belongs to him. We have land there. We have business there. We have a school there that I'm on the board of. We have a church with a building. Like, there are many things going positively. I don't fault other families for moving away. It's not like I look at them like lesser. Like, they have to make the right calculus. But for me, I'm trying to build business relationships, community relationships that are durable and hardened to where there can't be incursions and we're protected. And I don't want to do a sunken cost fallacy. Like, if the Lord calls me somewhere else, he'll call me somewhere else, and that's fine. And I've prayed many times, like, if the Lord wants me back in my the fatherland of Texas, where I hail from, like, where's the opportunity? But at the same time, there's advantages you have living in a blue state with other Christians because they see the enemy. Like, it's right there in front of them. Where in a red state, it's easy to become lethargic. So I actually kind of like that environment. I thought I was going to be a missionary in Pakistan. So Boulder's not that big of a deal. It's actually kind of nice in Boulder.
I don't live in a blue state, but I've talked to a lot of people about moving to my red state or purplish state. I think there's just three factors, and this is all I would say, is that you need, if you have church, economic stability, and familial relationships. And those are the three things I would judge. If you have a decent church, you've got a vocation and a community that you can stabilize yourself in and your family, and you've got some extended family there, I'd be really hesitant to recommend anyone move away from those things. If any one of those things starts deeply lacking, you got to start thinking through stuff, especially church and family. So those would be the three things. Those are the three kind of silos I would encourage you to think through. How healthy is your church? How healthy is the sort of vocational cost of living situation? Understanding that that's going to fluctuate. Like, sometimes things are cheaper in parts of the country because it's rough, right? So you are paying for amenities in your community. And then just what is, are you moving away far from family? Those would be the three areas I'd consider.
So before I came to Battleground, which is in a red state, or a blue state, I was in a different blue state, and that was Connecticut. And what we enjoyed there was a very, I think, healthy, reformed, extended community that was made up of churches that had affinity for each other and had relationships with each other. And we did things together. So there was a lot of interaction concerning homeschooling, classical Christian education, and then youth ministry stuff. And because of that, it's a pretty attractive place to be. If you're in central Connecticut and you're wondering where should I kind of land, that community that I was a part of, and it was about 4 or 5 churches that constituted that community. That was a pretty great place. Here in Battleground, it's a bit unusual in the sense that Battleground is probably a reddish town. It's got, some people describe it as purplish, but it's got some pretty hardcore MAGA dynamics to it. And partly that's due to the fact that Portland is just this looming presence on the horizon that just kind of threatens us on an ongoing basis. And it kind of creates a kind of militant anti-Portland mindset. So this is the anti-Portland. And people are often surprised at just how, this actually is probably the most Christian town I've ever been in, to be perfectly frank, in terms of the number of people in good-sized and fairly healthy evangelical churches. Probably when it comes to engagement in the political arena here, our closest ally is an independent Pentecostal church, Church on the Rock. And they're just about on the same page with us about everything except tongues. And maybe, they're kind of like those strange, pre-trib people who are just active in all kinds of stuff, and you say, well, what are you doing? It doesn't make any sense. But okay, we're glad. So anyway, that's kind of the dynamic here. And of course, the church that I serve has been around a while. I mean, there's a great legacy. It's had some bumps along the way, but it's in a really healthy place and some great families and really mature leadership. I can't overestimate the value of battle tested elders, and we've got those here. So it's a pretty great place to be, and I just happen to be kind of the guy that is enjoying the fruit of many years of hard and labor and invested energies.
Wrapping it up, what are some recommended reads for inculcating patriotism and American heroes and values and great stories of God's providence in American history to kind of form what you were talking about, Michael, American Christianity? What are any recommendations from you guys on that front?
Emily would probably know some of these better than I would, because I know we have them in our Charlotte Mason education. But Dr. George Grant has written so much on this stuff. There's a lot of people that write on it, but they can take it weird directions. I trust George's interpretation probably as much as anyone. So I just go to Amazon and look up George Grant, see what he has on that. If you're looking for church history and you're a little tarded, I would start with Trial and Triumph. That you guys probably know. That's basically, they had to base that off Needham. It sure feels like they did. But that's a book that you can, like, an 8th grader can read and benefit from. So if you don't have it into you to do a multi-volume thing on church history, just start reading that with your kids. You can read it to them at night. It's cool, right? But it walks you all the way through that stuff. So I'd go with that for kind of like church history. You got to start somewhere. That's a good one. And then, a book I love that is more narratively is The Man Who Moved the Mountain, which is about a Presbyterian guy who comes up through Appalachia and plants a bunch of churches out in Appalachia. And that helps you understand that sort of culture out there that I think really got exported to a lot of places in America. That'd be another good one. But yeah, Grant and that. I don't know if you know any.
A couple that have helped me. One is Calvin's Company of Pastors. I really enjoy that book. Is that, you like that one? Yeah. it just gives a good vision, and it really gets into the complexities and the failures and the wins that they had in Geneva. The other one that I read in 2020 that might be relevant now that other people might be interested in is a professor named Gary Stewart wrote Justifying Revolution, because that question is on a lot of people's minds. It helps ground it in our American history, and helps particularly for Christians show the importance of the church and pastors speaking up on this stuff. And it also it gives you better context, because your basic instincts as an American after what happened this week are like, we should do something, which is great. I love that instinct. You also need a sense of temperament and measuredness about you to know what's possible, and that kind of book can really like help ground it in the American experience and what they chose to do.
Any final thoughts before we wrap up?
Are you guys okay with us not recording the next session and just moving underneath that tree and I'll scream really loud? Can we do that? Are you all right with that?
Yeah. Okay, so yeah, that's the plan. When we wrap up here, if you're going to stay for the final talk, which will be after a short break, we're going to if you're going to stay, move a chair. We're going to go under the shade over there and do it that way. So give a round of applause for our speakers.